slideshow mode. Bear with me, get back to the, excuse me, there we go. Love technology, we're all getting very acquainted with it. So what I'm going to do this morning is supporting healthy digestion and immunity with simple dietary tips. And a lot of this information here is in both of those books of mine. You can see Good Mood Food and the De-Stress Effect. So we're going to be looking at the gastrointestinal tract, also known as the gut, in relation to the immune system. And when we look at the fact that our gut wall, that is all of the inside of the tube, all the way down from the mouth to the anus, that houses 70% of the cells that make up our immune system. We can see it's not that it's not just that the digestive system talks to the immune system, but rather they are absolutely intrinsically linked. Like any part of the body, they don't really know that they're separate. It's all working as one great big orchestration. And particularly when we're talking about the gut and the immune system, that orchestration is very, very bound up in the nervous system. And our digestion works when we're in calmer states in the nervous system, the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. So this is, that very much feeds into our immune capacity, is supporting digestion and supporting our best digestive capacity, so that our gut wall is healthiest possible, and therefore that those immune cells on the gut wall can flourish. So roughly speaking, the digestion moves that which we need into the body and eliminates that which we don't need. So we have things coming in the top end, and then the body is the gut wall is discerning whether that's something that we need to take in as nourishment or something that could potentially harm us, and we move through. Similarly, we're eliminating that that's coming out of every cell in the body as waste through detoxification mechanisms, through detoxification pathways in all of the cells, and then through the liver and through the digestive system out into hopefully healthy bowel movements. So that's a very important part of the immune system, because it allows the body to have a sense of kind of clearance, and gets things that like waste, that like nutrients that we need for good immune capacity into cells most easily, and allows best healing mechanisms. So, one of the things that's really key in terms of our immune system is the nervous system, and that is really how the gut and the brain talk to each other through the gut-brain axis, shown here. So that can also be known as the microbiome gut-brain axis. The microbiome is our healthy bacteria on the gut wall. So often known as probiotics, pro meaning for health and biotics meaning bacteria. And the conversation, the continual communication between the gut and the brain, it really has an influence on the immune capacity at the gut wall, but really also that then the microbiome, the probiotic bacteria up the gut wall, are really talking back up to the brain in terms of our feelings, in terms of appropriate response for the immune system. So signs that we need digestive support are not just about digestive symptoms in and of themselves. So often people really will only spend time with the digestion, although things are getting more known now, in terms of the importance of the digestive system for the whole of our health. But a lot of people previously have really only paid attention when something has gone wrong, or they have a digestive symptom or something like IBS, when the system is calling out for attention. But we can look at something like, particularly the overarching call to look at immunity, that is coronavirus at the moment, being seen that we need digestive support when we might have frequent, recurrent, or difficulty getting over infections. So supporting digestion is a really key part of our self-protection, and also how to what degree we might get the symptoms of an infection. But we also might see that the symptoms through the gut-brain axis: difficulty self-soothing, difficulty coming down into calm states, things like bad breath, where there are more gases and our digestive capacity is less, and things kind of coming up from below. Frequent burning sensation and urinate, so that just brings along to things that might be more systemic, like urinary tract infections. Fullness in stomach, difficulty digesting fatty foods, flatulence or bloating or excessive belching all lead to the fact that digestion is compromised. We can't have full digestion, and so much of that will also lead to things like, will point to things like chewing and eating mindfully, really allowing calm states that allow full digestive capacity. Because if we haven't chewed fully at the top, we haven't allowed the nervous system states that allow us to produce digestive enzymes, full stomach acid. It's very difficult to make that up later down into the small intestine or the colon. And a digestive system works on the most surface area possible. So we can tend to feel as gas is produced or bloating. Diarrhea is often nervous system related as well. It can be rushing things through, or has might be things building up in terms of harmful agents in the gut, but lots of reasons for that. And the nutritional stuff we'll look at today isn't just about looking at particular conditions, but rather about looking at overarching what we need to look at: digestive health of the gut wall. And so diarrhea and fewer than one bowel movement a day, although they seem opposite ends of the spectrum, we're talking about general health for regulation here. And then recurrent headaches, sensitivity to chemicals, etc., spots or acne, and poor tolerance of alcohol, they all point to need for digestive support that's also detoxification support. So the health of the liver is really crucial for the digestion. It feeds in to the digestion, and part of liver health is how a health of the gut wall, and how we then eliminate that which the liver is trying to help us move through the body. So in the gut immune stress connection, 80% of gut bacteria should be probiotic, and our beneficial gut bacteria on the gut wall can be really reduced by stress. And this is our first line of immune defense. And it also supports liver function by keeping our gut environment at the right pH, the right kind of level for our for best digestion and best elimination, and also for full digestion, which includes things like producing lactase as one example of digestive enzyme. That one breaks down milk. We produce certain vitamins on the gut wall, in particular in the colon, B vitamins and vitamin K. And our gut bacteria lower the pH of the colon. They keep it in a slightly acidic way that's best for us to fully break down food and keep that gut environment able to allow our beneficial bacteria to flourish. So that there's kind of self-serving there. And they also enhance peristalsis, so that's gut motility. It's how things move through the gut efficiently. So that regulation between loose bowel and a full and satisfying evacuation at the other end, the regulation in the middle is good peristalsis, good gut motility, and that's probiotic bacteria allow that. And they also create fuel for the colon. They create fuel for cells in the gut to renew. And we're renewing cells in the gut every 5 days. It's incredibly fast turnover. So that 70% of the immune system housed on the gut wall, a lot of that is within the immune antibodies on the gut wall. So that's the main part of our immune system that is actually anti-inflammatory. So much of the rest of our immune system works in a pro-inflammatory way. It creates inflammation, and inflammation is part of the stress response. So it's a survival response to stop us kind of bleeding to death if we were fighting something or running away from something. If we were wounded, we would want to seal the wound to not bleed to death and to bring immune components there. So it's part of the stress response. the anti-inflammatory response that brings things down and allows healing, not just in the gut, but throughout the whole body, is signaled from the gut. That's really important. It's one of the reasons that keeping our gut wall, our gut mucosa, the inside lining of the gut wall healthy is really crucial for our whole immune system, not just topically in the gut, locally in the gut. And that's regulated by immune antibodies called secretory SIGA antibodies on the gut wall. And like probiotics, they are lowered by stress. In fact, it's a signal back up to the nervous system that when we have lowered beneficial bacteria, we keep stress responses up. And there's lots of research to show that that keeps us reacting from the central nervous system, the brain, back down to the gut. Because there's an assumption from the gut, the communication through the whole body, that if there's a perceived danger, we need to keep up survival responses. That's a good way. That's a good self-protection. So it's kind of where racing mind can keep us into depleting immunity via the gut wall. So low levels can result in inappropriate immune responses because those antibodies on the gut wall are all about modulating the immune system. So that's not just boosting it, it's bringing it up when it's too low, when it's potentially there, when things have got a bit inflammatory, where it's not able to fight disease off so well, or invaders coming into the body, or where it is too high, which might be overaction, like inflammatory conditions, eczema, asthma, hay fever, etc., or intolerances or autoimmune conditions, bringing overreactive responses down. So it's about bringing things to an appropriate immune response for what's actually going on, as opposed to being overreactive or dampened in certain ways, which stress can really do. It can really change how we are able to respond to things and keep us locked into these over responses or under responses. And that can also be placed back into the gut, things like leaky gut, intestinal permeability, where the gut wall can't fully heal. Things get let through, and we can have more of a tendency to food intolerances as well that way. Partially digested foods getting between cells into the bloodstream, and also directly through inflammation on the gut wall, through particularly when that gets to diagnosed conditions that are inflammatory bowel disorders like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And then overall, that really tends to bring a lowered resistance to infection, which is a particular interest to us at this time. And really comes back to why, if the nutritional stuff here we do, will support the gut wall in many, many ways. So just an overall diagram there of how the gut microbiome is related to gut function, GI function, CNS circuitry, which is the brain and spinal cord, central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which is our nervous system responding to stress, and our immune system. They are all bound up. So for nutritional considerations in gut and immune health, firstly, looking at the nervous system, we would want to be balancing blood sugar and lowering cortisol, which is a stress hormone that can become high with chronic stress, to keep the stress response regulated to support the gut, and also particularly with higher levels of blood sugar in the blood, which will come from stress itself as a fuel source, or from dietary sugar, to lower insulin production by lowering blood sugar levels tending to run around the bloodstream, because higher insulin tends to trigger inflammation. It's one of the reasons that diabetics are at more risk in terms of immune conditions. So then we, alongside that, support of the gut environment. So partly that's full digestion, how we digest, allowing things to move through fully and not hang around in the gut undigested, creating gases, putrefying, and then allowing, when full digestion, you have parts of the gut that are free because things are moving through easily, and that allows probiotic bacteria to flourish, and to have that healthy gut environment. So also that's inhibiting microbial overgrowth, where probiotic bacteria can overgrow kind of in the wrong places. Things need to be constantly moving through the gut. So probiotic bacteria doesn't just overgrow in the small intestine, it moves down to the large intestine, and also suppress harmful bacteria. So stuff that's actually managed to get through the stomach acid. And if we're not chewing fully, and if we're not able to be digesting in very calm states, we don't have enough saliva produced or stomach acid produced that really kill things off. They're both immune defenses. So if things have got past good saliva from real chewing, from good stomach acid levels, from lowering stress responses, then there should be less invaders coming into the gut, able to get into the bloodstream, but of course some will get through, and then good immune health on the gut wall inhibits that overgrowth, and that harmful bacteria coming in. And then in and of itself, health, integrity, renewal of the gut wall, mucosa. So as I said, that whole, those cells are renewing about once every 5 days. They need a lot of space, they need a lot of calm time in order to renew. So we'll go through foods now, and I'll give you some examples. You can see pictures of recipes that I have available. So if you look on my website, charlottewattshealth.com, it's at the bottom there. I have lots of resources. If you also sign up to my mailing list through there, then I can send lots of resources through, and you can always ask specifically what I've got here, and I will send you that information. So eliminating waste is one of the key parts of digestive health. Fiber sources both allow us to hold on to waste and move that through as the bulk of stool, but also they give the gut lining something to do, as exercising the smooth muscle of the bowel as well. It's something to kind of push against. And we get those in both soluble and insoluble fiber, but overarchingly these are in beans such as borlotti, pinto, kidney, black-eyed, chickpeas, lentils, but anything that's a pulse, peas including that, green peas. And also then those are examples of grains that are non-gluten grains, so brown rice, buckwheat, oats and rye. Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, so all things that we would find in a natural diet, particularly fruit and vegetables, which we've been having for a lot longer than we've been having grains and pulses. They're quite novel foods. We'll talk about that in a second. But fresh fruit and vegetables, and particularly more vegetables, as much as possible, at least 2/3, 3/4 more vegetables than fruit. And particularly pectin, which is a type of soluble fiber. It's the stuff that makes jam, but it has that kind of that bulking effect in carrots, apples and plums. So they're incredibly good for moving toxic substances and toxic metals out through the gut. And then soap seeds, particularly chia and flax or linseed, create a mucilage when they are soaked. It's why they're used in things like Bircher muesli and have got such a good reputation in gut health, because they create this mucilage when soaked that really bulks out the gut mucosa and allows a supportive lining for gut healing. So then those fiber sources can also have some of those fibers are prebiotic sources. So they're particular fibers that feed probiotics. So the pre there meaning pre for bacteria, they allow it to happen. And all of those fibers on the previous page will be prebiotic to some extent, but the ones here are particularly good sources to include, particularly if you are feeling any constipation or if you have loose bowel. So either way, they help regulate. So if they're loose bowel, they hold water into the stool and bulk out stool. And if you're tending to constipation, they also bulk out stool, but they allow healthy motility on the gut wall, and allowing a stool to be formed fully. So those are asparagus, Jerusalem artichokes. People don't use very much. They're very little kind of tuber ones, not the globe ones, but they're always on prebiotics lists. The allium family, onions, garlics, leeks, have are really high prebiotic sources, which is why for many people they can actually cause gas. So for any of these, if you feel they don't suit you, listen to your body over me. It's not just that these things are good, you should be having them. These are overall things that can have certain effects. And then within that, it's really important to listen to your body. So some people really handle onions, garlics, and leeks, these very sulfurous family of vegetables, and they're very supportive for the gut. Some people, they cause gas that is and bloat, lets you know that they're not for you, and please do listen to that. We'll talk about slow cooking in a minute, because that's ways that these fibers are broken down in ways that we kind of have naturally evolved with them. Kiwi fruit is really useful. You can see in the picture there, that's a recipe for chia seeds that are soaked in coconut milk. It's a fat source, and we'll come to that one later. It includes a lot of things that we'll mention all throughout. And kiwi fruit has got research behind it showing that it's incredibly supportive for the gut wall. And beans and pulses, and we'll talk about how to cook those and break them down. So like onions, garlic, and leeks, they can be quite difficult to digest for some. And then bananas, which many people kind of poo-poo as sugar sources, but they're incredibly useful little compact energy sources, particularly if you're trying to get over sugars. And then psyllium husk powder, which is something that you can therapeutically, but it must be taken with plenty of water, and you must get hydrated and have hydration between meals really before you start adding that in. And then health of the gut also includes outsourcing digestion. So digestion takes a lot of energy, and we have been cooking for about 300,000 years, as evidence shows, in terms of finding pots and evidence of cooking and fires. We've only been eating grains and pulses for about 10,000 years in any type of significant amount since we became farmers. So it was known from immediately then that there's much less nutritional content in those foods, pulses and grains, that we had to grow in larger amounts to sustain a larger population. And they can tend to be inflammatory, so they can tend to damage the gut wall by creating a lot of gas, and actually being pretty hard for us to break down, because we're not chimpanzees. We're not chewing for 14 hours a day with big flat teeth. So this is why traditional processes came in through farming, and often why modern methods of cooking foods really fast, or through more chemical methods and not chewing fully, can mean that grains and pulses can actually be much more inflammatory for people and cause lots of gas and bloating. So traditional processing, for instance, of grains would be things like sourdough processes, that fermentation process that takes a long time, or things like bircher muesli, where soaking grains in an acidifier really breaks down phytic acid and lectins that can cause problems on the gut wall and problems with immunity and immune regulation. So on the top there you see a slow cooked recipe that will have the pulses are lentils, and they're slow cooked for long and slow in beans and pulses in onions and garlic. So onions and garlic have a massive history across the world for breaking down these components in these harder to digest fibers in beans and pulses. So slow cooking in and of themselves can also help people who might struggle with onions and garlic themselves to break them down. And also cruciferous vegetables, if you find those make you a bit gassy, then slow cooking them long and slow helps deal with the sulfurous compounds in those. The birch and muesli there at the bottom is oats soaked in something that is acidifying. So that is often traditionally an apple juice or a yogurt, but something with an acid component that breaks those down. So health of the gut environment, fermented foods have a very long traditional use. You can see lots of examples here. Live natural yogurt, miso is fantastic. I usually have miso in the cupboard just to add some vegetables to for a very quick soup. Sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, kimchi, kefir, kombucha, sourdough I mentioned before. It's a fermentation process based on rye. Tamari, which is an excellent soy sauce, which is gluten-free. It's delicious. It's a Japanese soy sauce. But also cheeses, cheddar has a very sour taste that you can feel is fermented. And examples here, you can see that sauerkraut there is on a bed of beetroot on a rice cake, and that to the side there is a kefir made with coconut water. Now, fermented foods don't need to be overdone. Have what you handle, but again, really listen to it. We can have too much. It's not just that these things are good for us and more will be better. If we tend to have an overgrowth of gut bacteria up in the small intestine and we're not getting that through with good gut motility, then adding more fermented foods in can exacerbate that, and you can find yourself more bloating. It can be that your gut bacteria, your microbiome on the gut wall needs to get used to things. But you'll find you can handle some things and not others. I love the taste of kombucha, but I can only have it every so often, and too much makes me bloat rather a lot. And I tend to keep the fermented foods down because some I can feel support, but beyond that it's too much. And particularly if you tend to feel that you have yeasts present, it might be sore throat stuff. It might be furry tongue, it might be any kind of athlete's foot, or even tendencies to urinary tract infections, or glue ear or ear infections. It might be that you just need to bring those down and just experiment, see what suits. And then healing the gut mucosa really relies on antioxidant foods. These are foods that quell oxidative stress. They quell the type of stress created in the body that creates inflammation through free radicals. So there's unstable molecules in the body. And antioxidant foods are incredibly important for allowing healing mechanisms in the gut, bringing down inflammation, and all of those inherently have different properties that will gut heal as well. So avocado, beetroot, berries, that whole list there, very high in antioxidants. Also herbs and spices, which are particularly ones here that are great for the gut wall. That is, they're calmative on the gut wall. They can also be kind of anti-nausea, which can be a sign that often the liver is a little bit overworked or compromised. And often they will bring down gas in the gut. So really traditionally, ginger, cinnamon, turmeric, mint, cardamom, fennel, licorice, those can all be used in ways for cooking. They can also be used in teas, added to, taken as herbal supplements. There are also, if you want a sweet treat, some dark chocolate also has incredibly high levels of antioxidants. It's very good for bringing down the kind of want for other sweet things, as are all those herbs and spices, because they all have blood sugar balancing properties. And then the odd bit of red wine, if you do want to indulge in something, then red wine has really, really good levels of antioxidants. So then very specific nutrition for fueling the gut wall. The gut wall is like many cells, as like all cells, has has fatty components in cell membranes, and it needs fats, particularly short chain fatty acids on the gut wall. They can be found and created from the fats that we eat, and also from pulses. They're converted on the gut wall. Pulses are converted into gut wall into those fuels. Also, coconut provides MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, which will fuel the gut wall. But they also things like caprylic acid, butyric acid, and lauric acid, which are also components which are very strong immune components. So lauric acid is found in human breast milk, and they are also incredibly antimicrobial. They tend to clear things out, unwanted invaders out from the gut wall very usefully. Organic butter has a substance called butyric acid in it, which is the butyric came from, which is the smell of sick, I'm afraid. That's butyric acid coming up mixed with food, which is why Parmesan smells quite a little bit like sick, because it has such high levels of butyric acid in it. So if you do eat butter, get organic butter if possible at this time. It's very good for fueling gut cells. And then having fats in the diet, particularly as unrefined cold pressed oils, and using those cold because they tend to be damaged by heat, for dressings. Olive, flax and sesame oil particularly good. And then nutrition for soothing the gut wall. So when things tend to get inflamed, they cannot go into healing modes. That's kind of being up in that high protective response mode. So mint tea, chamomile tea. Mint tea is kind of more known in terms of the gut wall. Chamomile tea has less press because it tends to be associated with sleep and calming, but in that it tends to raise levels of a neurotransmitter, a calming neurochemical, calming brain chemical called glycine, which helps to keep us asleep. It also calms the gut wall, but it also and then it has very kind of immune modulating properties on the gut wall. Fresh herbs in the diet, like seen in this kind of salad here, alongside avocado, which is really useful for healing the gut wall, because it's got that creamy texture that is very, in and of itself, very soothing, bringing soothing fats to the gut wall. And we mentioned before flax, linseed and chia seeds, which can be soaked overnight in enough water to cover them and added to smoothies or cereals. So if you blend something like a smoothie, it's not just you get that really useful mucilage, but if you're doing something that's just vegetable or fruit based, like adding coconut milk as well, it brings a fat component that means the smoothie doesn't release its sugars too quickly into the bloodstream. And you can add them to cereals. If you do, make sure you keep any water in there, because that water's got really, it's got the good stuff in it. And then also, if you do tend to IBS, you tend to stuff where the gut is either going into spasm and ejecting things through loose stool or diarrhea, or going into seizure and holding on as constipation, and often IBS will alternate between the two. Then magnesium, the mineral magnesium, is very calming on the gut wall, smooth muscle of the gut wall, and it regulates the nervous system response on the gut wall. So it helps to regulate bowel movements. And about 300 to 600 grams a day, spread out. You might get some in the multi, and say take some in the evening to really help sleep as well, where the gut can heal overnight. So supporting full digestion and detoxification. Bitter foods are really key. We don't have so many bitter foods naturally in the diet anymore. We've really bred the foods we eat to be sweeter. So a lot of the vegetables and fruit we eat would have been much more bitter, much more sour in the wild. They're domesticated. They don't have as much bitter, and we tend to have more of a sweet palate. So bringing bitter and sour foods into the diet can change your palate to not crave so much sweet stuff, to find sweet stuff tastes sweeter, but it also gets digestive juices flowing. It prompts bile to come from the liver to both help detoxification and break down fats in the diet. It lets your body know that things are coming into the gut and to produce digestive enzymes. And this is why these foods here were very traditionally used as starters, aperitifs. You might see endive, radicchio, chicory, romaine cause, they were quite bitter leaves, as a starting salad. And olives, grapefruits as starting foods as well, but we can incorporate those into salads as well, as something that alongside the food we're eating allows us to digest it. So I tend to make my dressings out of olive oil and lemon juice. I like that taste and I like that sour, and it also helps people to eat vegetables a bit more. So even broccoli in lemon juice, I tend to put it in olive oil, sesame seeds, lemon juice. Or you can use apple cider vinegar to have that before meals, like you have lemon juice, just to prompt stomach acid. And most acid reflux does tend to be low levels of stomach acid, and that needs a bit of diaphragmatic breathing. If you go to my movement segment of this that was earlier in the week, I talk a bit more about acid reflux, but we do need to bring stress levels down to allow the production of stomach acid. But lemon juice and apple cider vinegar will help. Also, if that's very compromised, you feel things can't get down, having digestive enzymes 1 to 2 a meal can really help, at least in the short run. They do help to prompt our own production. So then lowering sugar is really key to reducing inflammation and stress. There's some little examples there of some frittatas that are a really good breakfast food, having egg as protein, as fats. The Bircher muesli is a really good alternative to that if you are vegan or you don't eat eggs, and really helps to bring down this fact that our Stone Age ancestors would have eaten about 20 teaspoons of sugar a year only from fruit and honey would have been scarce. Modern man, and these statistics are from ages ago, it's really hard to get these statistics, but modern man consumes at least twice that in an average day, from cakes, biscuits, sodas, sweets, fruit juices, etc., stuff that we just wouldn't have had available to us before. And that's a massive interruption in our ability, in our immune capabilities, and our tendencies to go to inflammation. Sugar directly produces inflammation, which dampens down our ability to fight off invaders. So if you do, bringing down sugar is something that we can really focus on in this time where we can just really look in terms of self-care. So defaulting to stews, if you feel that you are needing some gut and immune support in this time, going back to stews. They're easily digestible. They're outsourcing energy that could be used for digestion to heat outside the body instead. They can cook pulses long and slow in garlic, like I said, and they can be really healing to the gut wall. So you can add in all of the components that I've talked about before, spices for calming, particularly cruciferous vegetables in terms of green leafy vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, cavolo nero. They bring sulfur to the gut wall for collagen production. And then depending, where you eat, glutamine is an essential amino acid. It's a conditionally essential amino acid that needed to feed gut cells, that can be in both chicken and cabbage, have really high levels. That's why chicken and cabbage soup have been a healing broth for many years in many cultures. Squash, veg, and carrots for the bulk, and antioxidants. And then celery is an amazing background, even if you don't like celery raw. Using it as part of a stock or a base for a stew calms the gut wall, calms the whole nervous system through the chemical apigenin and high levels of the mineral potassium. And then having coconut milk in stews is really good to give a little sweetness, to bring those medium chain triglycerides to the gut wall and to balance blood sugar. And you can bring soups and stews in with a curry there that really brings the spices in as well, and I have to say that's great for breakfast. So the how we eat is as important, if not more. Full chewing, do sit to eat, so that your body can go into those parasympathetic rest and digest tones of the nervous system, allowing time to digest afterwards. Also having little snacking between meals, so give your gut time when you're not just orally fixated and putting the next thing in, but time between eating where it's allowed to heal and you're allowed to then get good gut motility. And also go back to those movements that I did in the previous session that will be on the YouTube channel for HealthFlix, to find out some movements that will support digestion. So thank you. I was running through that. I hopefully have left a little time for a few questions. If not, do email me at info@charlottewattshealth.com. I'll see if I have any questions coming through. There's no questions there, which is a good thing since I only have a couple of moments. But what I do want to just end with is this is a really good time to come into this self-care that's really recognizing in the gut-brain axis what we need to come to a sense of center. And our gut-brain axis is part of our central channel. We evolved all of our neural tissue around this very kind of the tissues that first formed as part of and around our spine. So coming in to awareness into our center really helps us to also feel a deep sense of safety, and we feel a sense of safety at the gut. Oh, got questions coming through now. Opinion on raw vegetables for Crohn's disease. I would be really mindful about that, and I would only have raw vegetables that are very easily digestible, like lettuce leaves or salad leaves, but do go back to soups and stews for breaking down the fibers in there for Crohn's. Stock soup from bones is wonderful. If you do are a meat eater, that allows us to produce collagen, both direct collagen from the stock itself, and also bringing the amino acid glutamine that directly heals gut cells, and also immune stuff. Yeah, I always test on the gut wall for immune and secretory antibodies on the gut wall for that. I tend to hunt a more kind of hunter-gatherer paleo style, which tends to bring down grains and pulses as much as possible, or at least be really mindful about cooking those in the ways that I said. And for those, yes, who eat porridge, I really would, I would tend to soak them overnight and have something that's much more a Bircher muesli. And I do sometimes recommend probiotics, less so now, in that some people tend to have a lot of overgrowth, and you can really overdo probiotics. So I think it's incredibly important to have good gut bacteria, but build them up slowly. Use them alongside all of the gut measures. If you find a lot of bloating with probiotics, ease back, support your gut, and come in slowly, just to allow your gut bacteria to catch up. So yes, those are SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Be really mindful about taking probiotics. You don't necessarily need it. You just need to support the gut wall. Oat milk, it's taking over the world. I tend to recommend nut milks more because they're not grain based, but I would vary the non-dairy milks that you have, so you're not just putting yourself open to getting a food intolerance for having one thing over and over and over again, which is a lot of the problem with the modern diet. Is we have too much of the same thing over and over, not enough variety, and we don't eat with the seasons, so that our we're getting we don't have enough chances for the immune system to get over stuff. It gets the memory of something, and then it can tend to create food intolerances from seeing something too often. Homemade hemp seed milk is fantastic, wonderful. So it's a seed and soaked to be broken down. And I'm out of time with that. Thank you for those wonderful questions. I do hope I answered all of them that came through. Sorry if I didn't get a chance to. Do go to my website, charlottewattshealth.com. I'll be putting There are lots of resources on there, and I'll be putting more resources in terms of digestion for immunity up over the coming weeks. Been lovely to do this with you and see you. And I will have to end there because the next person's going to need to come in. Goodbye.